Chapter 7 outlines Holland's theory of vocational personalities and work environment. Holland believes that his theory relates to the person-environment fit and the work adjustment theory. The work adjustment theory describes the hows and whys one adjusts to the work environment, which is hinting that a relationship exists between the two. Person and environment also follows the same relationship of believing that one's personality and their environment has a relationship that coexists with one another. Holland believes that his theory answers three fundamental questions. The first question is, what characteristics of a person and their environment relates to positive vocational outcomes? That outcome can relate to job satisfaction. The second question is, what characteristics of a person and their environment lead to negative vocational outcomes? This can relate to dissatisfaction for the work that they're in and also in decisions about the career. And lastly, he believes that his theory answers the question of what are the most effective ways of helping people with career concerns. The premises of Holland's theory is that dependent on how we express ourselves through our personality, it plays a role in how we choose our careers. Holland also believes that for our chosen careers, which relates to our personalities, we will meet those alike. And what he means by that is that typically within our work environment, we will meet people with similar histories and personalities. Holland believes that there are 6 personality types. Those 6 personality types are realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. Holland also says that each of the personality types has different characteristics, attitudes, and abilities to complete job tasks for their environments. For example, if you met somebody who has a realistic personality type, typically they are task-oriented, introspective, and independent. Some of the sectors that they would excel in are math, analytics, and writing. Typically, you would find them working in areas with research, scientific laboratories, and or things relating to math. Holland has 4 working assumptions. The first working assumption is that an individual can be described and can be related to the 6 personality types. Again, the 6 types are realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. His second working assumption is that the work environment can also be related to the 6 personality types. The third working assumption is that individuals would typically like to work in an environment and with people with similar personalities, and which will have the correlate with the environment. And his fourth assumption is that an individual's personality and their work environment will correlate with their behavior.
Alrighty, and so now I'm going to go over the RACE personality types. And my main objective in doing this is to kind of give some examples and visualize each category in some real world examples. Keep in mind that these personality types are different, but there's also a lot of overlap in them. So just keep that in mind as we go through them. On the PowerPoint, we have a visual aid that Eve found online. And I'm just going to be reading off some of the values, potential competencies, and typical work activities and environments that are in table 7.1 in our textbook. The first personality type is the realist type, and some values are being practical, modest, and having traditional values. Potential competencies with this type is mechanical ability, ingenuity, problem solving with tools, and physical strength. Some typical work environments or work activities for this personality type would be jobs with tangible results, fixing, building, and repairing. When I think of this, I think of construction workers, handymen, people that can fix stuff. They're real good with their hands. They like to build things. So that's what I think of when I think of this personality type. Next, the investigative type. Some values are independent, self-motivated, analytical. Some potential competencies are scientific ability, writing skills, perseverance, And some typical work activities and environments are ambiguous or abstract tasks, solving problems through scientific or laboratory settings. And when I think of this, I think of scientists, people that work doing experiments, possibly even investigators, people that have to kind of, think independently and be autonomous. And so that's what I think of when I think of this personality. The next category is pretty straightforward, and I think it's pretty easy to identify. Artistic, some values from an artistic point of view are independent, non-conforming, and self-expressive. Some potential competencies are creativity, imagination, artistic ability, and some work environments and work activities would be creating artwork or performing some values. So that would be musicians, dancers, artists, and like I said, this is pretty easy to identify. Typically they go on their own. They have their own ways, and they're just they're different. Intentionally. So moving on, social type is going to be very familiar for all of us because this explains a lot of us, and I know I can say that for sure with me. Some values between social for the social personality would be humanistic, ethical, concern for welfare of others. And so some potential competencies are social and interpersonal skills, teaching, and some typical work activities or environments would be leading discussions, social and mental health organizations, and that's really us in this program. So that's we're all big S's. Next, we have enterprising, and some values associated with enterprising would be conscious, ambitious, energetic. Some potential competencies for this personality would be verbal skills related to speaking, selling, leadership skills, and some typical work environments or activities would be giving speeches and presentations and selling merchandise. When I think of this personality, I think of car salesman. I think of, for example, people on Instagram that they want to help you repair your credit. And so these people are they're very motivated. They want you to believe in them because they want to help you. And there's also part of their vocational personality. Lastly, we have the conventional type. And within this personality, some values are management of systems and data. Orderly and systematic. And so some potential competencies are management of systems and data, and they can be perfectionist. And some typical work activities and environments would be organizing office procedures and keeping records and filing. So when I think of this personality, it's people that work probably in offices or they do reports, and they're probably very picky with the things that they do, and as mentioned earlier, they like to be perfectionist. So that was the six race six personality types.
Holland believes that there are secondary work assumptions, and those secondary work assumptions will help to identify ways personalities are interrelated. To the right, you will notice a hexagon structure that lists the six personality types. You will see realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. Under the secondary assumption of calculus, Holland believes personalities adjacent to one another will have more in common than personalities opposed. So, for example, if someone with a social personality meets someone with an enterprising personality, they'll have more in common than a social personality meeting a realistic personality. Holland's concept of congruence relates to a person's personality and their work environment in relation to those six categories. So when a person is congruent with their personality to their work environment, typically they'll have more job satisfaction and will stay at their job longer. The identity assumption relates to one's ability to identify their likes, their dislikes, what interests them, and what doesn't interest them. So using the identity assumption, an individual will be able to identify what personality matches their work environment, which will provide stability for them. The differentiation assumption is the ability to identify your likes, your dislikes, what interests you and what doesn't interest you. And what one would do is measure the differentiation between the two or the four, just to find what work environment matches them better and work environment fits their personality. Lastly, the secondary assumption of consistency relates to the interest and relates to the interest placement of the hexagon square. So a person with a social personality and a person with an enterprising personality who meet each other, you will find that they will have more things in common and be more consistent with each other, but they're relating to the work environment and personality, as opposed to someone with a social personality and with a conventional personality. They won't have that much in common, so they won't be really consistent with one another relating to personality and work environments. Aside from secondary assumptions, the hexagon structure serves three purposes. The first purpose is to outline consistencies as it relates to one's interest, which can be referenced in primary, secondary, and tertiary relationships. The second purpose of the hexagon structure is to define consistencies in work environments. The third purpose of the hexagon structure is to find congruence in one's work and personality.
Alrighty, so now we'd like to go over some peer-reviewed research. First one's going to be on the left. Zinedine and company in 2020 published a study. The study was relatively simple. They just did a web search and they were interested in three key terms: Holland theory, career, and educational decision. Now, from all the web searches they got, they had an inclusion criteria. The article had to be relatively new, from 2013 to 2018. Once again, I had to talk about Holland's theory at some point, and they were looking at English articles. Now, although they were English, there are a couple articles that were posted in Germany and other parts of the country. They just weren't English. And so from that study, this will be posted in our reference section, so you're able to go and see it. The study corroborated that the persons and environment are important factors for those seeking employment. So basically confirm Holland theory, and like any other theory, you need contemporary research, to kind of reaffirm, the beliefs, from old theories, to kind of reconfirm, their point. The study on the right was interesting, and it was done by Tang in 2009, and this one is also in our reference. This study was done on the Chinese population, and I was interested in it because I wanted to see cross-culturally how the Holland's theory would work. And so with the population, they did find consistencies with RASIC over there with the Chinese demographic they used. The congruency, for the most part, was in the median range. And remember, as Eve explained earlier, that congruency is basically finding the right personality, vocational personality with the right environment. And so it was in the median range for one reason that shouldn't be that we should be pretty familiar with: culture. Asians, as we have learned throughout this program, they're more of a collectivist culture. And how this impacts career choices is that they may not choose a career based primarily on their interests or their individual considerations because of their culture. As you can see there on the bullet point, parental expectations, that's real big in their culture. Sometimes their parents have certain expectations, certain jobs in mind for them, and they have a different view as opposed to us. We have more exploration. We're more individual. We like to try jobs out, I guess. But in China, due to their culture, it's a little bit different, and they're more direct on their employment. And there was also another phenomenon that was impacting, the career choices in China. That the article explained that in China they're kind of going through a transition and they're becoming sort of kind of more of a free market economy. And so it used to be that the government would appoint jobs to people, but now they're transitioning into sometimes you have to go out and get your job. And so some of the population, sometimes they don't know if they should go out and get a job or if the government will give them one. So that's another factor that probably affected the congruency um, with this population in this study. Okay, and to now kind of bring everything together, Naruto pointed out in 2013 three things that I wanted to highlight. The first one is that Holland theory is primarily used to help individuals make career choices. And this is basically what we've covered throughout up to this point in the presentation. Vocational personality, racic interest, work environments. But, from Holland's theory, you can also help individuals be more satisfied with their career. And that brings me down to the second bulletin point there. Um, the goal of Holland's theory, one goal of Holland's theory is to increase congruence between vocational, personality, and the environment. And the logic behind that is that if you are in an environment where you're working with your strength, your vocational personality, you're more likely to better perform and you're more likely to be better satisfied. So that's ideal for you and that's ideal for everybody, the employer included. And third, Neruda said that the Holland's theory can also be helpful in implementing career choices. So once you've identified those basics, you can start to identify probably internships or job shadowing or job fairs or things like that, to kind of put you on that path to find your career. Now, as counselor, it's also important to assess external constraints and the role that they have in the role that they may have played in the actual representation of interests. For instance, in the study, in the peer review, the Tang study in 2009, culture was a real important part there because due to the collectivist culture, um, for example, in that for that study, uh, due to the culture, you really can explore so much as we probably would do here or in Western cultures. And so, as a counselor, you want to be cognizant of that. And also, sometimes gender can also be a role in the actual representation. For example, somebody uh, they may kind of be ashamed of perhaps being in a job that's typically from another gender. So we want to be aware of all those things. I added these two. Family history sometimes is important. Sometimes in Western cultures too. Sometimes uh, jobs are preferred, stay within a family, or people may want to follow their parents' footsteps. So that's something you also want to consider. And also, lastly, I think this is very important too, because sometimes you may have a job that uh, it may align perfectly with their vocational personality and the work environment, but sometimes the salary may not be worth, doing what you're required to. For example, like social work. Social workers, as we went through earlier, they're big S's, and I've met social workers that love what they do, but unfortunately, they feel, and most people feel that it's too much work for little pay. So that may also affect career options and opportunities and views. All right. So Holland's theory also assumes freedom of choice, and what that just means is that you have the choice to choose whichever career you want. But as a counselor, you must understand limitations and constraints on choices. For example, some careers that may not have so many opportunities, or for example, certain careers you have to meet certain requirements. For instance, if you want to work as an architect or as an engineer, it's kind of required that you have to have some STEM, education at some point, because that's one of the things that's just part of it because you just can't have it And so as a counselor, you need to be aware of those things. Also, as a counselor, you should and even in career counseling, you need to identify and remove barriers when possible. For career counseling, some possible barriers could be stereotypes that clients may face in their desired careers. Sometimes society has, certain people are supposed to work certain jobs, and so if you're competent and you're able, you should be able to work whatever you want. But that could be a possible barrier, and that can also stem from underrepresentation in the field. Alrighty, and so to wrap things up, intervention wise, I view Holland theory as a starting point. With Holland's theory, as we have seen in research, it's been shown to be you know a good indicator of positive outcome for job and employment. And so I just view Holland's theory as a starting point. From Holland's theory, you can identify those interests, you can identify those ideal work activities and environments, and so it's a starting point. In conjunction with Holland's theory, there are other assessments that can help, kind of clear out your interests and your desires, such as the Strong, the O-Net Interest Profiler, CASI, which is Career Attitudes and Strategies Inventories. And so these assessments, when used together, they just help in clearing out those interests and desires and wants. And then lastly, the same way that we seek congruencies, incongruencies also are tell a lot too, because when you have an incongruency, that's how you know that that's not what that person wants. And so you also can get a lot of information, career wise about someone's incongruency career wise.
Of the presentation, we will be completing the RISEC assessment. I did add 2 links. You can either complete the Holland Code test on openpsychometrics.org or the OneNet Interest Profiler at My Next Move. Both follow the same algorithm of providing you 60 questions to answer on whether you like or dislike given job description. However, there is one slight difference that the Holland Code does offer an additional 26 questions that the OneNet does not offer. We will be using the OneNet Interest Profiler. So when you first click on the link, it will greet you with a small description of what the assessment entails. You'll be provided with 60 questions and you would answer whether you would strongly dislike, whether you're unsure, like, or strongly like the job. When taking the assessment, it's best to not think about whether you have enough education or training to do the work or how much money you would make. Again, you're just assessing whether you would like or dislike doing the work. There's no right or wrong answers. You don't have to rush when you're taking it. It is untimed. You can take as long as you want. And you also have the option to go back and answer questions that you are unsure of. And I did complete the assessment ahead of time, but I will be reading the questions that was presented. Build kitchen cabinets, lay brick or tile, develop a new medicine, study ways to reduce water pollution, write books or plays, play a music instrument, teach individual exercise, help people with personal emotional problems, buy and sell stocks and bonds, manage a retail store, develop a spreadsheet, or proofread records or forms. Majorities were a strong dislike for me. I had none that I just disliked, none that I was unsure of. I did like one, which was develop a new medicine, and I also strongly liked helping people with personal emotional problems. The next series of questions were repair household appliance, raise fish, conduct experiments, study the movement of planets, compose or arrange music, draw pictures, give career guidance, perform rehabilitational therapy, operate a beauty or barber shop, manage a department store, install software, or operate a calculator. Majorities I did strongly dislike. There was none that I just disliked. I was unsure of one, which was study the movement of planets, and I did like 2, conduct experiments and perform rehabilitational therapy, and I strongly liked giving career guidance. The next series of questions were assemble electronic parts, drive a truck to deliver packages to homes and offices, examine blood samples, investigate the cause of a fire, create special effects for movies, paint set for plays, do volunteer work for not-for-profit, teach children how to play sports, start your own business, negotiate business contracts, keep shipping and receiving records, and calculate the weight of employees. As with the two previous series of questions, a majority of these I strongly disliked. There was one I just disliked, none that I was unsure of, and 3 that I liked, which were examine blood samples, investigate the cause of a fire, and do volunteer work. There was none that I strongly liked. The next series of questions were test the quality of parts before shipment, repair and install locks, develop ways to predict the weather, work in a biology lab, write scripts for movies and TV shows, perform jazz or tap dance, teach sign language to people who are deaf or hard of hearing, conduct group therapy, represent a client in a lawsuit, market a new line of clothing, inventory supplies using a handheld computer, or record payments. Majority of these I strongly dislike. There was some that I did not like, one that I was unsure, which is develop a better way to predict the weather. 3 that I did like, which were work in a biology lab, teach sign language to those who are deaf or hard of hearing, represent a client in a lawsuit, and one I strongly liked, which is help conduct a group therapy session. The last batch of questions regarded setting up and operating machines to make products, putting out forest fires, invent a replacement for sugar, do laboratory tests to identify diseases, sing in a band, edit movies, take care of children at a daycare, teach a high school class, sell merchandise at the department store, manage a clothing store, keep inventory record, and stamp, sort, and distribute mail. Again, as with the other previous batch of questions, there was majority I strongly disliked, none that I did not like, 2 that I were unsure of, which is put out forest fires and take care of children at the daycare, and 2 that I did like, which is invent a replacement for sugar and do laboratory test. There was none that I strongly liked. Once you complete the assessment, just give you the option to go back and reassess questions, or also re-answer any questions you were unsure of. However, if you're still unsure of those questions, you can leave it as so. So I scored a 2 on the realistic, a 25 on investigative, a 0 on artistic, a 24 for social, a 3 for enterprising, and a 0 for conventional. For the investigative, when I click on the tab, I'm shown people with investigative interests like to work and work that has to do with ideas and thinking rather than physical activity or leading people, which is true for me. So I like searching for facts and figuring out problems. For the social, I like interest working with others to help them learn and grow. I like working with people more than working with objects and machines or information. Typically, I would like teaching, giving advice, and helping and being of service to people. And when you do this on your own, you do have the option again to click on the tab that you also did not score high on. So this assessment does offer job zones that will show you what level of experience you will need for said job, education, and training. You could either select little or no job preparation, some job preparation, medium job preparation, high job preparation, and extensive job preparation. For example, let's click extensive job preparation. It will show you what experience you will need, the education, which is typically a master's, a PhD, MD, or a JD. It'll show you what training you need and some career examples, which are pharmacists, lawyers, astronomers, biologists, neurologists, or veterinarians, clergy. You can select next. And since we use the extensive preparation needed, that'll be job zone 5. And then once you click next, again, it will show you what you scored high on, and then it'll give you careers based on those. And these are the careers that it shows up for me. So when you do this on your own, again, you answer the questions based on your likes or dislikes. You'll be able to see where you scored high, where you scored low, select the job zone for the training and preparation that best fits you, and it'll show you a series of careers that may interest you. The group engagement exercise of the presentation will be presenting you guys with the case study with 3 questions to answer. The case study goes as follows. Jamal is an incoming freshman at FIU. Jamal is on football scholarship and says that he enjoys football, but it's not his entire life. Outside of football, Jamal loves music. He studies, listens, and will love to produce music one day. Jamal is very social on campus and is very popular because he attends most of the university's parties. Academically, Jamal is undecided on a major so far. Jamal's father is the band director at FIU and his father works at the sax building at FIU. Although Jamal and his father have a passion for music, they rarely agree on what is good music. As a result, Jamal is not remotely interested in joining the band with his father and would rather stay away. His father encouraged Jamal to use the services at FIU Career Center, and Jamal has an appointment with you to discuss career opportunities. Now that we've reviewed the case study, here are 3 questions. The first question is, based on the information provided, what category or categories currently describe Jamal? The second question is, using the secondary consistency assumption, independent on the personality type category or categories that best describe Jamal, what personality type will provide consistency? And the third question is, what career advice would you provide Jamal at this current time? Now that we reviewed the case study and we went over the 3 questions, here are some possible answers. The first question was, based on the information provided, what categories currently describe Jamal? And the 2 categories are artistic and social. The second question is, using the secondary consistency assumption, and dependent on the personality categories that best describe Jamal, are they consistent? And the answer is yes, the artistic and social personality types are consistent with one another. And lastly, the third question was, what career advice would you give Jamal at the current moment? Some career advice that you can give Jamal is for him to explore the difference that he has with his father regarding music and then their relationship. Another piece of advice that you can give Jamal is, does FIU have the correct path for him to produce music? And you can also ask Jamal, did he come to the Career Center because he wanted to or because his father wanted him to come?